What's going on? National Master Nelson Lopez, and today I'm going to talk about opposition in chess, what it is, and why it's important. Alright, so the term opposition in chess just means when two kings are directly opposed to each other. So in this position, the kings are in opposition. And you can see that if white were to try to move forward, he couldn't because black's king would prevent it. And if black were to try to move down, he couldn't because white's king would prevent it. Now, there's an important thing about opposition, and that is that only one player can have opposition at a time. What that means is whoever made the last move. So in this position, if it's white's turn and he moves his king over, you would say that white has opposition because white made the last move. If it's black's turn in this position and black moved his king over, you'd say black has opposition because black made the last move. So here's another example, white to move, and he moves his king up, he gains opposition. So it could be sideways like this or up and down. One more example, it's black's turn, so black can play king a6 and gain opposition. Now some of you are probably thinking, why do I care if two kings are in opposition? It looks pretty pointless, right? Well, there's actually this really common position where if you know about opposition, you can get a win. If you don't know about it, you're just going to get a draw. So if you play through a game and you trade off most of the pieces, it's pretty even, but you somehow come out with one extra pawn. If you could get this pawn all the way down and get a queen, well then you'd be able to win fairly easily. If you don't know how to checkmate with a king and a queen, I'll put a link below, but that's pretty easy to do once you know the process. The hard part is getting this pawn down there to becoming a queen when black's king is blocking your path. And actually in this position, white has one move that he can play to win the game, and all the other moves are going to be a draw. So if you want to pause the video and try to figure out what the winning move for white is, go ahead and do that now. Alright, if you said king to c5, you'd be correct. Now if you remember what we just talked about, king to c5 means that white now has opposition. The reason that's important is because black now either has to go to the side or he has to go backwards. So black's going to try to stay in front of the pawn because he doesn't want it to become a queen. So if he goes back, white can get opposition again. And this time, black has no other option but to move to the side. And as soon as he does, white can jump to the side. And the reason this is important is because now, look at all these squares. White's king is controlling them, which means this guy just has to go get a queen. So black has to move his king somewhere. Then you can push your pawn, takes away that square. So black goes back, push your pawn again, and there's no way black can stop it. He moves here, you go here, moves here, and you get a queen. I want to go back to this position and show you the move that most beginners will play, and that's to push their pawn forward. And this move actually immediately leads to a draw. And the reason is now, black's just going to jump his king in front of your pawn, and how are you going to move it forward? You can't, right? You can't move it if there's a piece in front of it, so you have to move your king. And the problem is that now, when he moves his king back and you move your king up, he's going to get opposition, right? He just moved, so he has opposition, not you. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, why does that matter? You can still move your pawn forward. That's true, but you'll see the problem very soon. So we're going to go check. He's going to move. We're going to move. He's going to go straight back. We're going to bring our king up. And again, he's going to get the opposition. And now, this is where the problem comes in. If we push our pawn check, he moves his king over, again, blocking it. And the only move that we have with our king that defends the pawn, because we can't go here because his king, and if we move anywhere else, like back here, he's going to take our pawn. So we have to move over. This is a stalemate, right? Look at all these squares that are covered. But he's not in check. So it's not checkmate. It's stalemate. He can't move. So that's the same thing as a draw. It's a tie. So this is the problem if you push the pawn forward and allow black to get opposition. Then the game that was a win becomes a draw. So I'm going to go back to this position and flip the board around so you can see it from black's perspective. If it's white's turn and he makes the mistake and he pushes this pawn, if you're playing black, you should have a draw at this point. He completely gave up his chance to win as long as you don't mess it up. So if you're playing black, the only thing you have to remember is to keep your king in front of his pawn, and when he forces you to move, you make sure that you're always going to be able to get opposition. You put your king in front of the pawn, and now he goes here, he's forcing you to move somewhere, but you make sure that you can always get opposition. And what that means simply is that you always go straight back. Okay? Just always go straight back. Because if you go straight back, whenever he moves to one of the sides, it allows you to get the opposition. He pushes his pawn, you move over. Remember, this is the correct the correct move, okay? Always straight back. If you go to D8 or B8 instead, you're going to lose, right? So if you go there, then you allow him to get opposition. And now when you try to block the pawn, it doesn't work because he pushes it. You have to get out of the way, and he comes in and gets a queen, right? You have to go here, he goes here, he gets a queen. All right, so going back, the correct move is king c8. And now, regardless of which way he goes, you're going to be able to get opposition. So when he pushes the pawn, you go over, he goes over, you end up with a stalemate, and it's just a tie. So you can see that whoever gets opposition determines whether the position is going to be a win for white or a draw. And if you understand how opposition works, you're going to be able to win the games that you should win, and you're going to be able to get draws in the games you should get draws. There you have it. Now you know what opposition is in chess. I hope that was helpful and you learned something. As always, thanks a lot for watching, and take care.